Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm playing and experimenting with some new watercolors. I love being able to test out different brands and different ways to do watercolor paintings like I have with inks in the past. There's just something really freeing about trying something new. I've really found that when I'm trying out, even if it's just a new brand of watercolors, because I'm trying something new and I'm just seeing how does this supply behave, I've found that it kind of takes some of the stress and the restrictions that I give myself away because I'm just allowing myself to explore this new thing and see how that's behaving. And it's just really a very pleasant experience for me. I love it. I highly recommend it if you're feeling really stagnated and you're kind of stuck in a mode. If you're feeling like you'd like to experiment more, looking out for new ways of using the things that you love or new brands that have different offerings, I highly recommend it. It's fun. I love it. But today I'm actually using some handmade watercolors. This is not the first time I've used handmade watercolors. I've actually had some given to me by a wonderful subscriber at a convention that I went to, and I loved them. So when another person contacted me to see if I want to try out their handmade watercolors, I jumped at it because I love that. And I love the idea of being able to use art supplies that is made by hand from another artisan, and then it comes to me and then I can make art from that, and it just feels very connected and transformative, and it feels like it's turning something really beautiful into something else that's also beautiful. And these paints are made by Hunter Merlet. If you'd like to check them out yourself, he has an Etsy shop called Merlet Art, and I'll have a link down in the description so it'll take you over to his shop. I'll also have a link to my shop where you can buy this original if you'd like. There's a link down in the description as well. But yeah, let's just go ahead and dive right in and talk a bit about paints. I would love to talk a bit about what you look for in paints and what kind of attributes you might like or dislike, specifically when it comes to picking out paints that work for you and work for your workflow and for the type of art you want. Because with pretty much any type of art medium, they have pros and they have cons. But then there's also attributes that can be a pro for one person and a con for another. So being able to really get an understanding of how certain paints work, it helps you figure out which ones you like and why you like them, and which ones you like less and why you don't like them as much. And one of the things that originally when I first got into watercolors, I didn't want any of it in my work at all, and that's granulation. And granulation is where basically the different pigments that build up that one holistic paint that you're using, those can separate once they're on the paper, which is actually a feature that many people seek out. I now love it a lot, but it also has a time and a place in my own work. And at the beginning, when I was first getting into watercolors, I didn't want any of that. I wanted it to be very flat and very consistent. And I still have a lot of needs for paints to be very consistent like that. So I have my set of paints where I know which ones are granulating and which ones are not. So I know which ones I want to get like a solid glaze with, or which ones I want to build solid values with, and other ones that I want to granulate and create really rich textures. But I'm just saying all this because I find that some of his paints actually have this really beautiful granulation to them, and I loved that. I was really excited about that because there are certain paints that in my own palettes, I don't have those kind of colors that granulate, and it just creates this really interesting life to them. So being able to pick those kind of features out and say, yes, I love that about this paint, and this paint can be used in this kind of an application, it helps to when you're doing much larger, more time intensive pieces to be able to know where you can pull from to get those effects, and where you can make sure that you're just getting the bang for your buck from your own paints. Another one of those features is the opacity of watercolors. Generally, you want your watercolors to be very transparent, and usually the higher quality they are, the more transparent they are. And the more student grade they tend to be, or even cheaper than that, they tend to get more and more opaque and chalky. But there are exceptions to that. There are some paints that are intentionally mixed with a white pigment, which by virtue is opaque. It covers up the white of the paper with another white. And so there's certain pigments, then I've used them before, that do have this more opaqueness to them. And they have a great application for certain I love to use them specifically in mingled washes, where you create a wash and you can drop in different colors and let the watercolors flow together and create these really beautiful watercolory effects. And then being able to go in with this opaque white and drop that really thickly mixed is usually what I do, but I drop that in there and it just knocks the color out and it shocks it away from it. And I did a little bit of that at the very beginning when I was testing out these paints, and you'll get a similar effect whether it's these pure white paints or they're ones that are mixed with that, like this pink one. It's actually called Pink Lemonade, which I love, but they both get that kind of effect where they can clear out certain paint while they're still wet or cover up paint if it's dry. And they can have a lot of really great applications. And that's one area that when it comes to actually applying that to my own work, I have not really done that much at all. But I think that there are a lot more things that I could do with that if I really wanted to figure it out, which I do, because I am really interested in the way that the white reacted with the paints that were already there. I thought it was really interesting and beautiful, so I'd love to try that out a little bit more and figure out where I can bring it into the process that I already have. And I think two of these paints are my absolute favorites. I really loved all of them, but two of them were just like, they knocked it out of the park for me. The one that I am using right now for most of her tattoos is actually called Midnight Violet, and that one is one of my favorites. This is one that has this really gorgeous granulation to it. It's a really nice color that fits with the kind of colors that I love using, and it has, like I said, it granulates, but it's actually a very subtle granulation, which I love. I have some other paints that granulate, but they're very intense and strong. They separate very quickly and really just segregate themselves. The pigments do. And I love that. But it's nice to have something like this that can be a little bit more subtle, and I can still add a little bit more of this energy to it, and it doesn't have to really make it this really powerful impact. It's also something that when I'm working with like a larger scale area, I can get away with much more granulation. But if I'm doing something a lot smaller, I want that granulation to have a smaller effect for that small size. So this is actually a really, really nice color. I know for a fact that I'll be reaching for this paint quite a bit more. And then my absolute favorite, and this one is just like, there's no chance for any of them because it's such a gorgeous color, but I was sent the Quinacridone Gold, and you probably know, but the Quinacridone colors are my all-time favorite colors. They're so pure and vibrant and rich and gorgeous and transparent, and they have all of the features of watercolors that I love. And this particular paint, if you don't know, originally Quinacridone Gold was a different formulation. They actually used a pigment that was called PO49, and it is officially gone. You cannot get the original formula of Quinacridone Gold anymore. It's all been sapped up and gone. So this is like actual gold, basically. But this paint is used with this pigment. So I was so excited to be able to get my hands on this paint to try it out, because I've never been able to try the original version of this paint before. And it certainly lived up to the hype, I believe, because it was so rich and pure. I actually ended up using it for the shadows on her skin, which is a completely different application for this kind of color than I'd ever used before, but it was gorgeous. It just had such a life and pop to it. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I'll probably be using that paint up pretty quickly. I highly, highly recommend that paint in specific. But like I said, I used it in a very different way for this painting, where I used it for the shadow. And I actually really love that. I like to do it a little bit more because I tend to go very cool with my shadows. I like having very strong shadows on my subject matter when I'm painting, and I tend to do that with these really pure blues and purples. So going in with a shading color that was generally associated with lighter colors and brightness, I think it had an interesting effect to it. I didn't want to muddy it, so I ended up going with this gold color rather than going with like a blue color or something different. And I think it's something that I'd like to experiment a lot more in the future, just to test it out to see if I can get, in the end, a look that I want. Kind of a general rule of thumb if you're trying to achieve a certain realistic approach to shadows, though, is that it's usually opposite to the color the color family or the warmth of the light that you have. So if you have a really warm light shining on something, then the shadow will usually be very cool. It's actually really interesting. You can see it in a lot of different places if you notice. If you happen to be in a place with really cool light or really warm light, if you look at the shadows cast, it almost always looks like a complete opposite color. Like if it's a green light, it'll look like a red, rich shadow. And like I said, this original painting is available at my shop. There's a link down in the description that'll take you over there. And other exciting news, I will be at Emerald City Comic Con. That's March 14th through the 17th, so that is just right around the corner. I am so excited to be there. I will be in the Artist Alley at table W12, so if you'd like to stop by, I'll have lots of prints and originals and other art goodies, so I'm excited to be able to meet some of you guys there. And finally, I do have a link down in the description that'll take you to my Patreon, which is a wonderful way to help support me and this channel and the artwork that I do, so I do want to give a huge thank you to all of my patrons over there on Patreon. But that is it. I do post every Wednesdays and Saturdays here on YouTube, so I'll be back with another video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you then.